The answer was hanging in the air, a single, life-altering word that would instantly guarantee the $20,000 victory. But the young woman standing at the podium, barely 18 years old, looked directly into her mother's eyes and chose an absolute, terrifying silence. The triumphant applause of the studio was immediately choked by a stunning, agonizing quiet. Steve Harvey's initial eruption of frustration and confusion dissolved the very second he witnessed a solitary, crystal tear trace a path down the mother's cheek. Because the girl's silence was protecting something infinitely more precious than the money. It was safeguarding her mother's undocumented identity, shielding the one word that would condemn her to immediate, irreversible deportation. This was no longer a game. It was a devastating collision between the bright, rule-bound world of mainstream television and the dark, desperate, terrifying reality of life lived constantly under the threat of removal. We expect contestants to display fierce ambition and fight for every dollar, every point. We do not expect a young adult to willingly sacrifice their own future to preserve a 2-decade-old secret of survival. To truly grasp the catastrophic weight of that chosen silence, we must meet the Ortega family. They had made the pilgrimage to Atlanta from Central Valley, California, a community sustained by the backbreaking labor of migrant farm work. The family's hopes rested entirely on Sofia Ortega, 18, a brilliant high school valedictorian whose intelligence belied her profound anxiety. Beside her stood her mother, Elena, a woman whose quiet dignity and absolute weariness hinted at a life of constant grinding fear. With them were Sofia's younger brother and Elena's sister, Aunt Louisa, the one remaining legal anchor in their family. Their motivation for being on the show was devastatingly simple and immediate: to secure the money necessary for Elena's critical, long-overdue heart surgery. Every passing day was a gamble with her life. During the customary introduction, Steve Harvey's instincts flagged the deep, quiet tension emanating from Elena. "Elena," Steve began, his voice dropping to a tone of genuine, probing kindness. "Your daughter, Sofia, is a true champion, a valedictorian. You must be unspeakably proud. What immense personal sacrifice did you have to make, day in and day out, to raise such an extraordinary young woman?" Elena's hands visibly trembled as she gripped the podium's edge. Her voice was soft, carrying the subtle, unmistakable lilt of her Central American accent. "Every sacrifice, Steve. Every single one. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Always for the sole purpose of securing their future. They deserve everything that I, their mother, was never allowed to claim for myself." Steve noticed, but chose not to pursue, the distinct hesitation in Elena's posture, the way she meticulously avoided mentioning her current employment or her deceased husband, keeping her answers deliberately vague, creating a protective linguistic shield. The game, for now, proceeded. The Ortega family played with a focused, almost brittle precision. They dominated the first 2 rounds, their synergy honed by years of mutual reliance. Sofia, despite the blinding pressure, proved to be an unexpected strategic mastermind, effortlessly sweeping answers and easily outperforming the opposing Reynolds family. The family's energy was intoxicating, fueled by the hope of the $20,000. It was not mere money. It was, quite literally, Elena's life expectancy. But in the 3rd round, the entire foundation of their precarious reality collapsed. The question, announced by Steve, was a cruel, accidental interrogation. "Name a reason someone might have to abruptly leave the country." Elena froze completely. The cheerful atmosphere in the studio instantly evaporated from her face, replaced by a deep, visceral terror. Sofia, who was standing beside her, immediately recognized the subtle signs of extreme fear: the widening of her mother's pupils, the way her grip tightened until her knuckles were white against the podium. The pressure mounted relentlessly. The Reynolds family had control of the board. They needed 3 more answers to steal the round and eliminate the Ortegas. Steve Harvey. "Reynolds family, your answer was new job. It's on the board. Next up, name a reason someone might have to abruptly leave the country." The Reynolds patriarch, Mr. Reynolds, answered, "Family emergency." The board confirmed it was the number 2 answer. The Ortega family looked visibly tense, the weight of the category pressing down. Mrs. Reynolds, next up, answered with a heavy finality, "Deportation notice." The word hit the air, harsh and cold and undeniable. Elena flinched violently, a silent, terrible tremor running through her body. Sofia instantly moved closer to her mother, her small protective hand pressing firmly into the small of her mother's back. The answer was indeed on the board. It was then that Steve Harvey, sensing the overwhelming distress, looked directly at Elena. "Elena, you look desperately worried, sweetheart. I know it's just a game, but your face tells me that word, deportation, carries a meaning far beyond the television screen for you." Elena's fragile composure finally shattered. A single, crystalline tear tracked a path down her cheek. "It means, Steve, that life is incredibly fragile. That's all." She furiously wiped the tear away, forcing a desperate, thin smile back onto her face. Attempting to regain control, the tension remained until the final decisive question before fast money. The Ortega family managed to steal the board with a brilliant strategic answer, securing their place in the championship round. But the immense cost was visible to all. Elena was visibly shaking, overwhelmed by the harsh reality of the word and the relentless scrutiny of the bright lights. The fast money round, Aunt Luisa, the pillar of legal stability, went first. She was a focused, almost frenetic competitor, racking up an impressive 145 points. The studio erupted with cheers. Sofia needed only 55 points. Victory was, for all logical intents, guaranteed. Sofia stepped to the podium. She was pale, but her eyes held a fierce, terrifying, calculated intelligence. Steve Harvey approached her, his voice radiating gentle encouragement. "Sofia, you are a true champion. You only need 55 points. This money is entirely for your mother's crucial health. You've got this, young lady. Ready?" "Ready, Steve," Sofia affirmed, her voice an unexpected blend of fear and resolve. The clock started. Sofia answered the first 4 questions rapidly and confidently, earning 48 points. She needed a mere 7 more points. One single, accurate answer stood between them and salvation. Steve Harvey. "Last question, Sofia. Name a common fear people have about living in America." Sofia froze completely. The question was deceptively simple, but its implications for her family were immediate and catastrophic. She knew the most probable number 1 answer, the answer that would secure the win instantly. But the moment the question left Steve's lips, she saw her mother's eyes, wide with an absolute, paralyzing terror, a silent plea she understood perfectly. Steve Harvey. "Sofia? Come on, sweetheart. The clock is ticking. 7 easy points. What is a common fear people have about living in America?" Sofia looked down at the podium. She saw the number of the last question, the empty screen awaiting the life-altering word. She knew the answer. The word she had rehearsed with her aunt, the acronym she had overheard whispered in hushed tones within her mother's community for years. Sofia. She opened her mouth, ready to deliver the word, then violently snapped her jaw shut. She shook her head with desperate finality. I can't say it, Steve. I am profoundly sorry." Steve Harvey. "You can't say it? Why, Sofia? You knew that answer. Say the word and win." The clock screamed. Time expired. The studio was plunged into a cold, absolute silence. The family looked utterly devastated, not by the lost money, but by the shattering of their fragile hope. Steve Harvey walked over, his frustration at the lost prize quickly overwhelmed by intense concern. "Why, Sofia? You knew that answer. You threw away your mother's only chance at surgery. Why did you do that?" Sofia began to cry uncontrollably, the immense pressure of the secret finally crushing her. She turned toward her mother, who was also weeping, their tears a shared torrent of profound relief, not loss. Sofia, whispering into the microphone, every syllable laced with tragic clarity, "Because that word, Steve, that word is my mother's real name." The silence returned, cold and absolute. Steve Harvey. "Her real name? What are you possibly talking about, Sofia?" Sofia. "The number 1 answer, Steve. The one that secures the most points for common fear in America. It's ICE." The audience gasped audibly, a terrible understanding sweeping through the room. Sofia. "My mother, her real name is Elena Ortega, not Elena. When she came here 20 years ago, she used a stolen identity to work and survive. She lied about everything. She did it to keep us alive. But that word, that 3-letter acronym, ICE, it's the legal term that connects her back to her real, documented, illegal identity in the system. If I had said ICE on national television, the cameras, the network background checks, they would have been forced to look closer. They would have found her real name. They would have seen the 20-year-old deportation order attached to her file. Sofia looked at her mother, who was now being held upright by her sister Luisa. I didn't lose $20,000, Steve. I saved her from being deported. That single word, spoken aloud here, it would have exposed her and condemned her. We would have won the money for her surgery, but we would have lost our mother forever. Steve Harvey stood completely motionless, his face registering a pale, profound realization of the catastrophic reality they faced. He walked away from the podium, his shoulders visibly shaking, struggling to contain the sheer emotional and legal weight of the revelation. He returned moments later, his composure regained, but his eyes burning with steely, righteous resolve. Steve Harvey. We are not continuing this game. The show stops right here, right now. He looked directly at Sofia, his voice full of solemn respect. You just made the most difficult choice any 18-year-old should ever be forced to make. You chose love over fortune. You chose family over health. But you should not have to choose, Sofia. You should not have to choose between your mother's life and your mother's freedom. Steve Harvey turned to the producer's booth, his voice regaining its famous boom, but now laced with an undeniable iron resolve. We are going to do something unprecedented. This is no longer a game show moment. This is a moment of pure, decisive humanity. Steve Harvey, addressing the camera, the nation, and the legal system. I need a team of immigration attorneys in this building. Now. The best in Los Angeles. They are working pro bono. This family is not going to be destroyed over a bureaucratic technicality. This woman is a devoted mother, a hero to her children, and a hardworking member of this community. We are fighting this deportation order, and we are fighting it today, with the full force of my foundation behind us. The audience erupted in a standing ovation that stretched on for nearly 5 minutes. But Steve wasn't finished. Steve Harvey. And that surgery money? The money you so valiantly lost to save your mother's freedom? He pulled out his personal checkbook. That debt is settled. My foundation is covering the full, immediate cost of Elena's heart surgery. And we are establishing a comprehensive scholarship fund for your college tuition, Sofia. Because a young woman who can look at a $20,000 check and choose her mother's freedom instead deserves a future as limitless as her intelligence and heart. The Rivera family, their competitors, walked across the stage, tears streaming down their faces. Mr. Rivera placed his hand on Elena's shoulder. We're not just opponents, he said. We're family. Whatever this process costs, the Rivera family is contributing $5,000 to your legal fund, because we stand with you. The episode became a national sensation. The legal team Steve provided immediately began working on Elena's case, arguing for humanitarian protection and a path to citizenship based on her long residency and contributions to the community. The legal battle was complex and arduous, spanning 2 long years. During those 2 years, Sofia used the college fund Steve provided to attend California State University, studying law with a fierce, new determination. She didn't study to become a lawyer for fame. She studied to intimately understand the very system that threatened to destroy her family. She used her growing knowledge to assist the legal team, working tirelessly on her mother's defense. 2 years later, Elena Ortega's deportation order was officially, irrevocably dropped. She was granted legal, permanent residency, paving the way for eventual citizenship. The fight had been a brutal, emotional ordeal, but they had won their freedom. The final moment of the story came 5 years after the show. Sofia, now a successful law school graduate, stood beside her mother Elena, who was healthy and thriving after her successful heart surgery. Elena Ortega. Steve Harvey saved my life, not just with the surgery money, but with the lawyers. But Sofia saved my freedom. She looked at that money and she chose me. That's a debt a mother can never repay, and a choice I will never forget. Sofia Ortega. I didn't choose my mother over money, Steve. I chose her over a single, terrifying word, because no amount of money is worth the silence of a mother's voice. Steve Harvey keeps a framed photo of Sofia and Elena in his office. It's a permanent reminder that sometimes the greatest victory in any game is when you choose to lose for the people you love, defending their humanity against all odds.